50 Israeli Air Force fighter jets bombed multiple military and nuclear sites in Iran. This is one of the biggest operations that Israel has mounted when these nuclear installations were targeted. Energy infrastructure has been targeted by Tehran in Israel. The Israeli Air Force also symbolically bombed the gates of the Evin prisons in Tehran, where political prisoners and those opposing the regime of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei are lodged. Is Israel now trying to trigger a revolution against the Ayatollah's regime? That's our top focus of the show.
Iran strikes Israel. Israel hits back. Missile barrage continues. Fears of wider conflict mounts. What next in West Asia war? Big focus on India first.
Israel says it's destroyed more than a third of Iran's missile launchers, and targeting of Iran's nuclear sites has set back Iran's weapons program by years. Iran, on the other hand, insists it will continue to enrich uranium and won't give up its nuclear program. Iran has also warned the United States of consequences. The bomb damage assessment presents two very different pictures. Bomb damage assessment by Israel and the United States seems to indicate that the damage to Iran's nuclear program is intense and extensive. But Iran and some independent analysts believe the strike by the United States was more symbolic than substantive. And Tom Cooper is an independent military analyst and West Asia watcher. He joins me on this special broadcast. Also coming up on India First, Pakistan caught on the wrong foot yet again. Pakistan recommended Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize just hours before US B-2 bombers and Tomahawk cruise missiles massively plastered nuclear sites in Iran. Now Pakistan is under pressure to withdraw the Nobel Peace Prize nomination for Donald Trump. We get you that story at 8:30 tonight. I'm Gaurav Sawant. More than 50 Israeli Air Force fighter jets bombed multiple locations across Iran today, including the Evin prisons. We'll talk about that in greater detail. Now, Iran has hit back. This happens a day after the United States formally entered the West Asia conflict. Israel today attacked Iran's Fordow nuclear site once again, and this after the American B-2 bombers had dropped massive bunker busters, the GBU-57, at Iran's most fortified nuclear facility. The global nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, says the impact on Fordow could be unimaginable. But the most crucial question right now, what happens next? US President Donald Trump has already dropped a regime change hint that incidentally Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Israel Katz, the Defense Minister, had already indicated was their agenda. So is this then a change in the game plan, in the war aims, or is this aim plus that Israel now seeks to achieve with the US assistance?
So immediately this alert came and we had to rush to a shelter. I'm right now in a protected area, and you can see that how people have gathered to protect themselves amid those sirens that have gone on. And this can be a missile rocket attack from Iran towards Israel.
No stopping the Iran-Israel war day after US rained bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear sites. Israel and Iran continue to launch barrages of missiles against each other. Iranian missiles hit a power station in Ashdod in Israel. Moments of the attack were captured on camera. Following the attack, Israel reported power outage in parts of south due to damage near the infrastructure facility.
We are right now at Ashdod, which has been hit by the Iranian missile. This happens to be one of the major power centers in the southern city of Ashdod. That is the major port city in Israel. You can see the impact of in these pictures, where in Ashdod the restoration is going on with the police and the security forces on the spot.
In Iran, Israeli airstrike hit Tehran's notorious Evin prison, which holds known critics of the Iranian regime. Evin prison is a large and heavily fortified complex where Iran has confined political prisoners, journalists, academics, human rights activists. Israel continued targeting Iranian capital too. The iconic tower at Vanik Square in Tehran has also been struck by an Israeli missile. 6 airports in Iran's western, eastern and central were also attacked. Remotely managed Israeli aircraft destroyed 15 Iranian aircrafts and helicopters and disrupting the takeoff capability. US President Trump claimed monumental damage at Iranian nuke sites and directly hinted at regime change to make Iran great again. But Iran also warned US of dire consequences. Iranian army even called Trump a gambler and said that Iran would end the war started by US.
Criminal America, in its continued full-scale support for the Zionist regime's aggression, blatantly violated the sovereignty of the Islamist Republic of Iran last night, directly entering into a war with Iran. In the past, we debated whether Israel's aggression against Iran was carried out with US knowledge, support or coordination. But today, these questions are no longer relevant. There is no doubt now that the Israeli military aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran was conducted with the coordination, support and backing of the United States of America.
While Iran claims that the Fordow nuclear site suffered minimal damages in US strike, global atomic energy watchdog revealed that Iran suffered very significant damage at its most protected nuke site. With Shivani Sharma from Tel Aviv in Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
So the B-2 bombers are now back safe in the United States of America. What has been the impact of the B-2 bombers at a time when Iran says its nuclear program will continue, it will continue to enrich uranium on its territory? What happens next? Joining me now on this India Today special broadcast is military analyst Tom Cooper, someone who's studied the operations very closely, someone who studies West Asia very closely. Tom Cooper, welcome on India Today. Your assessment of the damage done by the B-2 bombers, the GBU-57s that were dropped at Natanz and especially at Fordow. What's the impact at Fordow?
Hello, Gaurav. Nice to be with you. Thank you very much for inviting me. As for assessing the damage, this is de facto impossible to say more than what we see from satellite photographs, which is that a total of 6 impacts was there. So these 6 GBU-57s that have been dropped on Fordow have hit the mountain, some 960 meters, quite close to the peak and quite close to each other. So it is very likely that bombs have detonated quite deep under the surface and probably caused some damage to the Fordow facility. The only problem about all of this is that already 2 days before the US strike, the facility was already evacuated, which means that the Iranians have taken out everything valuable, especially enriched uranium, perhaps also all the equipment, and then they have buried literally with thousands of tons of gravel and earth the entrances to the facility. That means whatever the Americans have targeted, well, it was not particularly effective in the sense of stopping Iranian capability to enrich uranium. They have delayed it at most. And now even the US officials cannot say where are some 408 kilograms of enriched uranium. So,
408 kilograms of enriched uranium. And if we
yes,
were to talk about the trinity of strikes, because I'm told close to 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles
yes.
targeting Isfahan, Natanz, and the GVU 57s at Fordow. What would have been the impact on Iran's nuclear program in terms of the American strikes and the subsequent strikes that have been carried out by Israel? And Israel continues to strike, including the Bushehr facility and several air bases
Mhm.
across Iran.
That is particularly interesting. You see, last week, after starting its attack on its aggression on Iran, Israel has claimed the nuclear facility in Natanz, the oldest nuclear enrichment facility in Iran, 30 meters under the ground, for destroyed. If this was true, why have the Americans yesterday bombed the same facility with two GBU 57s? Nobody knows. In the case of
Correct.
Natanz, there are satellite photographs showing one impact. That means that both bombs have hit the same place, which means almost certainly they have punched through and have destroyed one of the two holes, but the other hole is still intact. So that is Natanz. Then we have Fordow. I said 6 hits near the peak of the mountain above the facility. Very likely that the facility underneath is at least damaged, if not destroyed. But it was abandoned. It was evacuated and abandoned by the Iranians already days ago, because they have had enough time to not only to evacuate but also to cover all the entrances with thousands of tons of gravel and sand. So this is that part of the story. And then we have the third facility attacked by the Americans. This is the overground facility in
Isfahan.
Esfahan. Yes, exactly. Here, the Israelis have also claimed to have destroyed this facility, and then it turns out the Americans need 30 cruise missiles to destroy it. Uh, so obviously, Israeli claims are exaggerated, while whatever the Americans have deployed and destroyed over there, it was already too late because the Iranians have evacuated on time. And that is the conclusion from military point of view. You can now talk about, what kind of repercussions this has for diplomacy, for whatever. But from military point of view, the U.S. strike came much too late. That is the point. While the Israeli airstrikes were not the least effective.
And this would mean that Iran had done its job well. It's had a decades old nuclear program. Are they close to weaponization? Can they still go ahead with weaponization? Because Iran insists at least enrichment of uranium will continue. And will they now perhaps short circuit the process in your appreciation and speed the process of getting their atomic bombs?
It is a very good question, and presently the answer is unknown. Why? Because, for example, Majlis, the Iranian
Yes.
parliament, there was talk about abandoning the NPT, but the parliament did not bring a final decision in this regards. And even if it has actually just forwarded this decision to the National Security Council in Tehran. So now everybody is waiting. What is the National Security Council? This is Supreme Leader, commanders of armed forces, intelligence, and so on. What are they going to decide? And they apparently cannot decide what to do as next because the Supreme Leader is out of touch most of the time, because Mossad is running a manhunt after him, that they are trying to assassinate him, and he has already survived the several assassination attempts in the last few days. So the Iranians have a problem to communicate with him, so to say. On the other hand, I said, the problem is if they decide to abandon NPT, then yes, they are going to continue enriching somewhere else under hidden super secret circumstances, and then nobody can say what are they going to manage, how soon, or whatever else. If not, then they are going to enable further inspections by the International Atomic Organization.
Because so far it does appear to be one, failure of the United Nations, two, failure of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the manner in which first Israel went and struck their nuclear facilities, which Iran says were already monitored by the IAEA. Then the United States went and struck these facilities, which Iran has called blatantly illegal. But what's your assessment, sir, of the damage in the past 11 days of airstrikes and missile strikes, first by Israel and then yesterday by the United States of America, to the overall one, command and control structure, and Iran as a potent threat? capable military force?
Permit me to first observe one thing. When we are talking about failure of the international organizations, there is actually, insofar, a failure. There is a collapse of the entire system established since 1944-45. That means the UN Charter, all the possible international conventions. Israel is violating all of them, flagrantly, really, absolutely, with complete disregard for any kind of international treaties, conventions, international humanitarian law, laws of war, whatever you want. Israel is violating all of this already in the case of Palestine. Israel has launched now an aggression of Iran, which is also against the UN Charter, because this was absolutely unprovoked. And then also Israel has violated NPT by striking enemy, or in this case, Iran,
Iran.
nuclear facilities. So Iran has actually the right to say, sorry, but the Article 10 of the NPT says, if you strike my nuclear facilities, I'm not tied to NPT anymore. The Americans did the same. So this is one point. That means that the entire system of this law and order international law and order established since 45 has collapsed. It's worth nothing. Even more so if you consider that Trump has been caught negotiating with Putin behind the backs of NATO allies. That means even NATO is actually pointless, null and void, meanwhile, because the top power of NATO is negotiating secretly with the Russians. On the other hand, when you talk about Israeli attack on Iran, this attack is full of bragging, exaggerations, and claims which are without substance. For example, Israeli Air Force is claiming it is in control of Iranian airspace, but it's perhaps 2 times a week flying manned aircraft into the Iranian airspace, and then only for 100, 150 kilometers, not deeper. They're all the time shooting aeroballistic missiles into Iran. They're not flying actually into Iran. When you check with people in Baghdad, they are all the time seeing Israeli aircraft coming from Israel, shooting their weaponry in the direction of Iran, and then turning around without actually entering Iranian airspace. So this control of Iranian airspace is questionable. Then they are hitting here and there. They are hitting lots of military facilities. They are hitting police stations. They are hitting hospitals as well. They have disabled or damaged or even hit directly a total of 8 hospitals and ambulances and emergency centers in Iran, meanwhile. They are targeting ambulance cars with UAVs. So the entire quality of what are they doing over there is questionable as well. They have attempted, they have been also highly successful, absolutely no doubt about this, to disable the entire political and military leadership of Iran, to assassinate the supreme leader, who is the head of state. They have killed nearly all of top commanders of the IRGC and the armed forces. So they have been extremely successful in this. They have caused quite a lot of chaos. The government was even forced to shut down the internet for 3 days in Iran in order to curb these Mossad operations, this car bombing attacks, UAV attacks, intelligence collection, and so on. And they have arrested probably 100, meanwhile, out of estimated 1,000 Mossad operatives. So Israel was on one side successful in certain fields, but absolutely unsuccessful in other fields.
Does Iran remain a coherent military force, and will it continue to target Israel? The manner in which even today, of course, we are told only one missile, but yesterday a hypersonic missile was used by Iran. What's your assessment of the kind of weapons Iran still has and the launchers it still has to launch those missiles into Israel? Because each time there's a launch, Israel is able to strike at the launcher. So even if Iran has missiles, will it have as many launchers to continue to strike? And your assessment, how long, sir?
Yeah, my assessment, how long? That is precisely the point of what you are, or the answer you have asked to the question you have asked. Israel claims to have destroyed 200 missile launchers in Iran. It has provided evidence for perhaps 15, not more. And Iranians certainly have over 200. That means 300 in that direction. That is first point. The second point is the way Iranians are meanwhile deploying their ballistic missiles against Israel is very economic. Why? Because they have, during the first few days, they have mapped the Israeli air defenses. They have found out how they're operating, what can they do, where are they deployed, and so on. So now they know how they work, and now they have operate very economically. This is, you know, relatively small strikes, not more than 30 missiles, perhaps 32, 34 a day, but they are striking. The number of successful missile launches is slowly increasing. Why? Because of attrition of Israeli interceptor missiles on one side. On the other hand, because the Iranians are getting ever better. So there are estimates that they have around 3,000 ballistic missiles and that they have used something like 400 or 500 by now. That means if they go on with a tempo of, let's say, 10 to 20 a day, they can go on for the next 3.5 months or something like that. They can keep this a battle of attrition, which Israel can ill afford because its entire economy is momentarily paralyzed. The people cannot go to the work in the morning,
Yeah.
and many have to work from home or not even that. So Iran
And since you mentioned,
cannot reasonably, Iran cannot reasonably win this war in some kind of military context, but it can keep Israel under pressure. This is perfectly enough.
and that's exactly what it appears to be doing right now. In your appreciation, has Israel been able to achieve the aim it set out to achieve, delay or destroy the nuclear weapons program of Iran, to missile capabilities of Iran? Will they still pursue what is being described as aim plus, not officially, but unofficially, though Donald Trump did refer to make Iran great again in terms of a regime change, or is that a pipe dream?
So regime change through an invasion or aggression from abroad in Iran is out of question. This is not going to work because any kind of invasion is prompting Iranians to rally around the flag. That it means whoever is in charge, it doesn't matter who is in charge in Tehran, they're patriotic, they're fighting back. And this is not going to work. So that the regime has been shaken in its fundamentals, no doubt about this. So this is a partial success, so to say. In regards of nuclear program, delayed. How long? I don't know. We are going to see. But point is, Iranians have evacuated their enriched uranium, most likely also the majority of related equipment. They are going to hide it somewhere else and continue processing. So this is also partial success. In terms of weakening Iranian armed forces, they are huge. You cannot weaken them just like that. Of course, they have suffered losses. Israelis are claiming up to 200 launchers for surface-to-air missiles destroyed. Could be, I haven't seen evidence for 200, rather something like 50. But definitely Iranians have suffered losses in these regards. Iranian Air Force wasn't a particular power already before the war. It's flying only obsolete aircraft. This is caused by the fact that IRGC wouldn't let the regular Air Force get new aircraft, but also by refusal of Russia to deliver any kind, and earlier inability of China to deliver what would be interesting for Iran. So Iranian Air Force is no factor in this war, actually. So you have
Your
no
assessment.
clear-cut victory. You have no
Okay.
this decisive victory for Israel. On the contrary, they have failed to conclude this in a few days as they have planned. And now they have no way out. Now they are actually hoping that Tehran might offer a ceasefire. But Tehran is not
Yes.
going to offer a ceasefire. That is the point.
Yeah, because they say we are a civilizational state. There is no question of a ceasefire, a proud nation that is fighting back. So, what would Donald Trump's strategy be at a time when both Russia and China are not only waiting in the wings, watching from the wings? China has condemned it. You heard what Dmitry Medvedev from Russia said. He's made a very strong point. Your assessment: will any country provide a nuclear warhead, as Dmitry Medvedev seemed to indicate, or is that just posturing for the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
That is even less than that. Medvedev is time and again posting, excuse me for expression, drunken statements on the social media. Uh, Forget about that. We are following this all through the Russian invasion of Ukraine for 3 years. Meanwhile, he's babbling nonsense all the time. But in similar fashion, Trump has no strategy, or at least no other strategy, than diverting public attention from his actions in the United States, most of which are related to influencing the market, stock exchanges, so that he and his supporters are earning extra money. And this is, we are talking here about billions and dozens of billions, what they are earning to manipulate in the markets. This is what he is doing. And he is now thinking of just one airstrike and we can, the United States can come out of this. We are going to see whether the Iranians take it that way or not, because now he has given initiative to them. They can now strike all out with missiles at American air bases in the Middle East, because they have enough missiles to do so, because the ranges are shorter than those to Israel. They can also decide, okay, we are going to be quiet and strike back asymmetrically, which means through sabotage operations deep in the U.S. Background, unconventional attacks on U.S. bases or interest in the Middle East. They have the options now. The Americans not. The only option for the Americans is to reinforce the attack and to invade Iran, which nobody in the United States wants to do. They know that they are not going to, they cannot win this, such a war.
So a regime change cannot happen unless you put boots on ground, and there are no votaries for boots on ground inside Iran. And such a huge country, and regime change operations wherever America tried have been a disaster. America and
Disaster,
Europe,
yes.
whether it's Libya or Iraq
Libya is a bit
or
different, but
Syria.
yeah. Libya is a little bit different story, because in Libya there was a popular uprising as first, and then NATO intervention. And then what happened after that? NATO has offered Libyans, new government, to deploy a stabilization force to help with reorganization of the armed forces, of militias into the new armed forces. And then what happened? Libyan government said no. Why? Because one part of Libyan government or parliament was bribed by United Arab Emirates, and the other part was bribed by Qatar. And
Yes.
these two are
But
at odds.
if I come back to the point,
Sorry.
do you think Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, and would that be a disaster, or is that just a threat that will not be carried out? Because that would impact Asia and specifically China in a big
China,
way.
yes, yeah. Uh, I can say only what I know, and this is that as of this morning, I have no confirmation from my contacts in Iran that they are intending to block the Hormuz. Whether they are going to do this or not, I don't know. I know that there was some talk about this issue in Majlis, in the Iranian parliament. Apparently, there is no conclusion in this regard, so we have to wait and see. But
And
if
in
it
your
happens,
appreciation,
if it happens, if the Iranians block Hormuz, the Americans are going to react and to attack them even more. On the other hand, this is going to result in hostilities and slow down of oil exports, especially to China. 20-something% of Chinese oil is coming to the Hormuz. So automatically, increased oil prices, which is in favor of Russia in particular, because Russia was short on money. Now it's flushed with money because oil prices are already higher, and so on and so on. So plenty of options, which are said, again, without a decisive, without Iranian final decision in this regard, it's hard to estimate who is going to do what and what is going to come out of this.
very interesting, because if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, then the Fifth Fleet at Bahrain may get active, and then American assets and interests and so many bases in West Asia would automatically, including the ones in Iraq, would be under threat. But would that benefit Iran if it were to target American interests in West Asia, or, in your appreciation, sabotage terrorism in continental America? That could be the way forward, because that too is a real threat, isn't it?
Methinks there are two options in this regard. There are, so to say, short-term outlooks for such an operation by Iran, and long-term. In short-term, it wouldn't benefit Iran. Why? Because the Americans would hit back with all their military might, and they really have the capability and firepower. They would really hurt Iran very badly. So, provided the regime would then survive such a blow, in long term, however, Iran is enjoys a massive advantage, simply because it's in the Middle East. The Americans are not in the Middle East. They have to bring everything from the United States or from Europe to the Middle East, to their bases in the Middle East, which means a huge logistical strain for the United States, which means we would then be talking about another war like in Iraq, Iran probably instigating civil wars, bombing attacks, unrest, political unrest, More than political unrest, they could even instigate an insurgency in eastern Saudi Arabia or in Bahrain, where the majority of population are Shia. So, you have plenty of possibilities in this, plenty of options in long term. But in short term, it would hurt Iran massively. So what
So
happens
Iran
then?
is not down and out in your appreciation right now.
No,
Iran
no,
does hold
no,
a
no,
couple of
no.
aces up its sleeve.
Yes. In long term, is in particular, the longer this goes on, the more advantage on Iranian side.
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Tom Cooper, for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. Iran holds a couple of aces, and in this battle of attrition, unless there is decisive victory for either side, this battle of attrition does appear to be advantage Iran, at least for now. For joining me here on this special broadcast, Tom Cooper, many thanks.
Thank you very much as well.
Pakistan is a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror and has had a long history of running with the hare and hunting with hounds. But has Pakistan finally been caught out as it tried to pull off another diplomatic somersault? So one moment, Field Marshal Asim Munir was invited to the White House and he was nominating US President Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. And the very next moment, they're criticizing the United States for bombing Iran and cozying up to the regime in Tehran. This as missiles fly and tensions explode. So is this a masterclass in typical Pakistani double-speak? Peace in the front row and proxy wars in the back. We get you more in this report.
Want 2026 Peace Nobel for Trump. Trump, an exemplary statesman. Trump is a peacemaker. Trump resolves conflict by talks. Pakistan gushing over President Trump just days ago, when its jihadi general attended Trump's luncheon in White House. Pakistan bent over backwards to be in Trump's good books.
He agreed with me. The reason I had him here, I wanted to thank him for not going into the war, just, ending the war.
Nominating the US president for 2026 Peace Nobel, even lauding him for ending India's Operation Sindoor. The very words have now come back to haunt Islamabad.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan.
As Trump bombarded Iran nuclear sites with bunker buster bombs and Tomahawk cruise missiles, Pakistan found itself cornered and in an embarrassing spot domestically and globally. Trump's attacks on Iran are seen in Pakistan as a betrayal of Muslim solidarity. Pakistan political parties and radical groups are up in arms against Pakistan pushing Trump's name for Nobel Peace Prize. Facing massive backlash and domestic heat, Pakistan has now slammed Donald Trump's attacks on Iran, turning the US president into an aggressor from peacemaker in mere hours.
A deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda, and if you look the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for the I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one too.
Well,
they won't give me a Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Pakistan obviously tried to cash in on Trump's quest for the top peace award, but the endeavor, seen as a diplomatic coup by Pakistan, has massively backfired. The exercise underlining the folly of Pakistan's shortcut diplomacy. Bureau Report, India Today.
Pakistan is a past master of speaking with a forked tongue. But on the Israel-Iran war, the world is also very sharply divided. So you have Russia and China. They've come out strongly condemning the bombing of Iran. Pakistan, of course, caught on the wrong foot. So barely 24 hours after Pakistan recommended Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, you had these US B-2 bombers. They launched the biggest attack with the biggest bombs, the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators at Fordow, at Natanz, and fired close to 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles at Isfahan. And now Pakistan has egg on its face. Now it says it needs to reconsider the Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. At least that's the pressure from within Pakistan. Joining me on this India First special broadcast is Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Also with me on this broadcast is Dr. Mohan Kumar, former top diplomat and academic, and Pastor Mark Burns is the spiritual advisor to US President Donald Trump, joins me on the show. Sushant Sareen, set the tone for this discussion, and you have a huge smile on your face already. Has Pakistan been caught on the wrong foot, or has Pakistan mastered the art of running with the hare and hunting with hounds?
Gaurav, I think, it's ironical, but both those things are true. They are past masters at running with the hound and hunting with the hound and running with the hare. They've done it. For example, they took the Americans for a royal ride in Afghanistan. For 20 years, they backstabbed the Americans, and the Americans were none the wiser for it. Even when they knew that they are being backstabbed, they had no choice but to go along with the Pakistanis. So they've done that. But I think they've also got egg on their face because, the duplicity also gets caught out. But they're also very shameless. When the duplicity gets caught out, they brazen it out, as they will do now. So what happened was that they tried to, apple polish Donald Trump, tried to do a massage, ego massage to Donald Trump, and thinking that this was their entry back into favor with the Americans. So they did that. And then they thought that, and they spread this news that, Donald Trump had delayed the bombing of Iran by 2 weeks because Asim Munir had convinced him to do that. And they thought that they are now going to become the center of international diplomacy. They will play a critical role in the Islamic world as the country which had dissuaded the Americans from bombing Iran. They will now have everything and everybody at their feet, etc., etc. And suddenly the next day, they nominate Donald Trump, and the day after, they have egg on their face when Donald Trump goes and bombs the hell out of Iran.
Yeah.
Now they don't know where to hide because there are two problems. One, the street in Pakistan is so Islamized, is so radicalized, which none of these Americans understand. They simply cannot understand how bad the situation is insofar as hatred for America and hatred for Israel is concerned in Pakistan. They might all want US visas, but they hate the United States. Now, the street is of that sentiment, but the state feels that it has something to gain from the US. And this big divide between the street and the state is now forcing them to walk this tightrope where on one side they are saying we condemn America,
Yes.
we condemn whoever has bombed Iran. But the American Secretary of State says that, look, many of the guys who are condemning us have privately told us that they are with us. And Donald Trump himself says that Asim Munir said he is with Donald Trump on the issue of Iran.
So let's take this point by point. Let's take this point by point. And Pastor Burns, in his first tenure, US President Donald Trump had blamed Pakistan for the situation America was in Afghanistan. He accused Pakistan of cheating Americans of $33 billion and being involved in the killing of US soldiers in Afghanistan. And suddenly, General Asim Munir or Field Marshal Asim Munir is invited to a White House lunch, and General Kurilla, the CENTCOM commander, calls Pakistan a phenomenal partner in the war on terror. Explain this change of heart and stance as you see this, sir.
Well, first of all, let me just say the President Trump nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize is not a shock to me. Whom, as the president out of his own mouth stated, he is handling single-handedly multiple conflicts around the world and bringing the peace to them. And that's the president's number one focus, number one goal, is to bring peace. I understand that it is the opinion of others that maybe Pakistan received egg on their face because the president has made it very clear, not in his second term, not just in his first term, but over 15 times, all the way back in 2011, the president's made it clear that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. The fact is, Pakistan may not necessarily be one of our best friends, but they, as of right now, are not calling for the death of America. Iran is. Iran also, Pakistan already is a nuclear weapon nation. Iran is trying to become. And so the president's focus is making sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and calling for the death of America. They're doing it right from the parliament halls. And so that's obviously a direct threat to the Western culture and the United States of America.
You know, Pakistan poses an equally big risk to the American culture, but be that as it may, Dr. Kumar, in your appreciation, are the Americans trying to use Pakistan against Iran? Is this the strategy and the reason behind the invitation for General Asif Munir to White House?
I actually think, thank you for having me. I actually think the Americans have strategic expedience as at the back of their minds when they are talking in terms of a lunch for the general. I believe there are interests in AFPAC for which they need Pakistan's help. Also, I believe that actually they're trying to drive a wedge between Pakistan and China as well. We don't know the content of the conversation between General Asif Munir and President Trump, but leaks of the conversation suggest that Pakistan has made a commitment that their relationship with China is as it is, and that Americans should not worry too much about it. So when you have, when you really, as you say, run with a hare and hunt with the hounds, then chickens are bound to come home to roost. And continuing with the animal and bird analogy, if you like. So I don't think this kind of a tactical foreign policy is going to be helpful. I agree with Sushant, you will be found out sooner or later unless you have a strategy and unless you are convinced about your diplomatic strategy. This is bound to happen. My own impression and view is that I think we should stop hyperventilating about this in India and allow Pakistan to do what it is doing, and it will be found out sooner or later.
Sure,
So I
Dr.
agree
Kumar,
with
no one's hyperventilating. We're actually enjoying the misery Pakistan is in, like actually enjoying their misery. And you know, when their feet are put to fire, and we hope it does, because ignoring it has consequences like in the past. You have leadership in the past that would want to have good relations with Pakistan, despite the fact that Pakistan was trying to kill our people. But Sushant Sareen, is the US trying to use Pakistan against Iran, or as Dr. Kumar says, an attempt to drive a wedge between Pakistan and China?
Look, I think both of them are legitimate objectives of the United States. I don't hold it against the United States if it was trying to maximize its own strategic interests, even if it means enlisting a very treacherous Pakistan, which has ditched it at every stage. It has never really given the United States what it wanted. One thing I have to tell, and with all due respect to Pastor Burns, see, the point is that you might not hear death to America from people in the Pakistan army, but you hear death to America is a very, very common slogan, not just on the streets of Pakistan, but political parties of Pakistan and legislators sitting in parliament, including those of the ruling party, which is patronized by the Pakistan army, are calling for jihad against the Christians and the Jews. They always have a jihad against us Hindus anyways. So I just thought I should inform Pastor Burns that, you know, maybe his information on Pakistan is not entirely correct. So that is one. Secondly, sometimes I feel, Gaurav, that the Americans suffer from what I call the abused wife syndrome. Yes. That the more the Pakistanis ditch them, the more the Pakistanis are treacherous with them and cheat on them. The Americans seem to harbor this feeling that no, maybe the next time when we get together, the Pakistanis will be more loyal. And every time they do this, they, you know, suffer the consequences of trusting a treacherous Pakistan. They might be doing it again. And like Ambassador Kumar says, I frankly, I think if that is the direction in which the Americans want to do, I can't stop them. But I can certainly, relish the prospect of seeing Pakistan squirm in embarrassment over what has happened over the last few days.
Because Pastor Burns, Pakistanis have been involved in American deaths, and for some reason, America seems to turn a blind eye to it. You had a Pakistani Air Vice Marshal's son who tried to set off a bomb in New York. You've had more than 2,500 American soldiers killed in Afghanistan, and Pakistan had a role to play in it. You had Osama bin Laden killed and caught and killed in Pakistan next to their military academy, and yet America seems to be doling out money, F-16 spares, and all of that to Pakistan. I wonder why, Pastor Burns. Is this selective amnesia? Is there a bigger game plan? Because Pakistan is, in your appreciation, if Iran is bad, Pakistan is perhaps a couple of shades worse.
Well, you got to understand the mind and the heart of President Trump. Again, he is a peacemaker, but he also is a deal maker. At the end of the day, the goal of President Trump is America first. That is to make sure that the nation, the sovereign nation of the United States of America, comes out on top, as should every nation. The president meeting with the Pakistani in general is really, number one, defending against the terrorism attacks that is happening in that region. Number two, preventing a larger conflict between Pakistani and India. We don't want that. That is not good business for nobody. It's not good business for Pakistan. It's not good business for America. And it's not good business for India. And President Trump wanted to thank the general for doing just that. But also, this opens up the door for trade and even technological collaboration, that's what the president wants, to turn a misfortune into business, to turn our maybe once enemies or those that are not necessarily so in agreement of our positions politically and policy, to turn them into our friends, or maybe at least business partners, because in the end, if the tide rise, all boats rise together. That's the president's agenda, and that's what he wants. That's why he met with Kim Jong-un.
When the tide rises, the boats rise together, but you can't have a boat of a terrorist and a victim of terrorism rise together. And that's that critical difference that unfortunately America, Ambassador Kumar, fails to realize. But I want to stay for a moment longer on the issue of Pakistan. Will Pakistan, given its geostrategic location, be able to once again pull wool over the eyes of the Americans, get aid out of them, continue with this China-Pakistan economic corridor, or will it now have to choose one or the other, China or America?
I think at some point, Pakistan will be forced to choose. I find it interesting that they have decided General Asim Munir is the main interlocutor with the United States of America. And when it comes to statements about condemnation of the United States action in Iran and the larger Muslim world, that has been left to the Prime Minister. And so the rhetoric is being operated by the Prime Minister, whereas relationship with India, relationship with the United States, and probably relationship with China is being handled by the military. And that is representative of a hybrid state that we are familiar with in India about Pakistan. My answer to your question, Gaurav, is that you cannot carry on this double speak and double game for too long. People in America are watching. They are watching what kind of statements the Prime Minister is making. They are watching also what the military said to him. Unfortunately, we don't have the full content of what transpired between General Munir and President Trump. But if there are some undertakings he has given about Balochistan, minerals, about Iran-Afghanistan war, the use of Quetta for bombing campaigns as a base. We don't know if those are the things that he has promised. Then I think the American interest in Pakistan is probably transactional and short term. But I think at some point, the chickens will come to roost. That's my sense.
Indeed, they would. And given the fact that today, when Pakistan talks about the cause of the Palestinians, it was then Brigadier General Zia-ul Haq in 1970 who was responsible for the massacre of Palestinians in Jordan. And perhaps this generation of Pakistanis should see that, and Palestinians should see that, because Pakistan clearly does not see the benefit of the wider Muslim world. It only sees its own benefits wherever and each time. Pastor Burns, Sushant Sareen and Dr. Kumar for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. We'll be tracking the story closely.